Welcome to Alpha Wolf Trading. Did you know that there's over 12,000 stocks or companies that trade on the OTC? Between the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, you have over 7,000 companies. But us as retail investors, we wouldn't know that unless we were researching. Because why? Wall Street focuses on the elite, the big companies. And where the retail investor has their advantage is in small and micro-cap stocks. Why? Because you have the opportunity to speak directly with leadership. That is what this is all about here at Alpha Wolf Trading. We're trying to find the hidden gems, and we interview the executive teams of companies that we think meet the parameters to be those hidden gems. I also want to make sure you understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I collect no compensation for the interviews I do here. These companies that I interview have been identified as potential opportunities for me and the members of Alpha Wolf Trading to receive a higher than average return on our investment. These companies I have identified either because of a technical setup on a chart, a fundamental change within the organization, new management team, new products, all kinds of different things that actually lead me here. But what do I think is the most important? Leadership. And that is why I do these interviews. I want to understand what drives the person that is leading the charge. I want to feel their passion. I want to understand their vision and the strategy that they're going to use to achieve success. That is what these interviews are for. I want to understand the share structure and the cap table, the size of the TAM, the total addressable market. This is the opportunity to learn all of those things. So sit back and enjoy. And if you learn anything from today's interview, do us a favor. Subscribe to the Alpha Wolf Trading YouTube channel. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. I recommend highly that before buying any security, speak to a financial advisor and do your own due diligence. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with a follow-up interview to one of my favorite stories out there that just had some pretty big news that I think is really exciting, and the stock has reacted to it a little bit, but Glen Lynch is here from Volatus Aerospace to fill us in on the details of what is happening and why or how it could be a very transformative time for both companies. Glen, thanks for coming in, man. I know you're busy as hell, but I appreciate you making time.
Oh, Tim, I always appreciate our calls. Thanks for having me.
All right, so tell me a little bit about this little event that just happened about a week ago.
Yeah, we've been working on this for quite some time. So back in Q4, we had I had a phone call. I can tell you, it was a Thursday night around 7 o'clock at night. And I got a phone call from an industry colleague that says, I got this guy, he'd like an introduction. Are you okay if I give him your number? And I said, absolutely. And when he told me who he was, I said, listen, when did you talk to him? He said, just a few minutes ago. I said, tell him if he's free, call me right now. And that generated a 2-hour phone call that basically, if that was a Thursday, it still feels like this is Friday because we've been going flat out ever since. But you know, when you look at the companies, the other company is called Drone Delivery Canada. In terms of industry participant, they're far our senior. They've been active. I believe they've been public since 2016, so they've been doing this for a while. Whereas Volatus has been public since 2021, but they're very much a technology company. So they developed, as their name might imply, Drone Delivery Canada. They focused on developing technologies to do drone delivery activities and based out of Canada. So they're focused very much on a geography and on a specific sector. Volatus, on the other hand, went a different way. You know, our focus was saying, okay, nascent industry, really see the technology going a long way, me, I see it very much as an aviation company, which is where I've lived for 43 years. And the technology is getting bigger and so on and so on. And so Volatus, we took a different approach. We never fell in love with technology. We didn't focus on technology. We focused on customer demand, remained technology agnostic. And we found when we identified a customer with a demand, we found the technology that made sense. We solved the problem either by selling it to them and training them, or ultimately our first choice is always to provide the services. And that's how we developed. And of course, from a revenue standpoint, we've grown very quickly, going from 2019. I think 2019 we were less than $1 million by far, and last year we posted in Canadian dollars revenues of about 35 million, and we've grown every year, and that's because we basically chased the opportunities. Whereas DDC, they focused on technologies and they developed some really, really capable things. They've got some interesting projects underway. So not to discount their actual revenue activities, they're the only drone company that I'm aware of in North America, maybe the world, that operates regular flights in and out of an international airport carrying cargo in a drone. They do that several times a week right now out of Edmonton International Airport. And then in Toronto, they're a licensed air carrier. They actually have a commercial aviation license that allows them to charge for the transportation of goods that belong to other folks. And they have dangerous goods authority. So they're carrying medical isotopes in and around one of Canada's largest cities in the Toronto area. So a lot of capability there. They developed what I would call a technology ecosystem, but because it was focused on the cargo space and flights beyond visual line of sight, we still have some regulatory hurdles as the regulations are catching up to the industry, and the technological hurdles as the technology is maturing as well. And it's a fast pace on both sides. So when he approached me, he said, you know what? I've got all this technology and I want to take a step back and say, how do we commercialize this technology? We've got some slow growth in cargo. Is there other things? And then, of course, he looks at us and he says, you've got all this revenue, but you don't have much technology. So think about it. We're a revenue company light on IP, and they're an IP company light on revenue. So that was the basis of what started the discussion. And then I started looking at where their capabilities were. And everybody looks at their drones, but in actual fact, what really impressed me is this company, during all the years of doing its research and development on its own technologies and doing the services that they're actively providing, had conducted more than 7,000 flights remotely. And we're talking about, flying a drone in Vancouver on the West Coast from Toronto.
Is there bad weather there?
Yeah, that's right. So what's interesting, I started looking at that and I'm going, wow. So we did a little bit of research and realized with all the experience they have and the safety data and their well-defined and well-evolved operational practices on how you're operating, they were operating about as professional as any airline I've ever been associated with in my life. So I went, okay, now how can we benefit together? Because, well, we're not a cargo company. We have a big cargo aircraft on order for 2027, Nautilus aircraft out of San Diego. But fundamentally, that's still a couple of years away. So how do we do this today? And then you start realizing there's large scale contracts, not specifically in Canada and the United States, but all over the world. You can look at Africa and the opportunities for doing things for, the World Food Organization in countries that don't have regulations that impair our ability to do it. We've got those type of opportunities. There's locations around the world where we can actually transport medical isotopes between medical labs and hospitals that are located on islands, just to give you an idea. And then, of course, I look at our own service, and we're pursuing larger scale contracts in power utilities, oil and gas, and offshore maritime surveillance, where you can have a long endurance drone, something that's capable, like we have on the defense side of our business, a drone that's capable of being missionized and flying for 15 hours of persistent surveillance activities. But if you're operating them remotely, it means you're changing pilots every few hours. You need a ground support crew. So you're basically, you have an entire community living out of a hotel. Very costly, very inefficient, so on. When you've got the ability and the experience to operate drones remotely, you have a launch and recovery technician that puts the aircraft in the air, safety pilot, launch recovery technician, whatever you want to call them. They link with the operations center. They put the drone in the air, and for the next 10 or 12 hours, it's flown by people in an operations center where you tap a guy on the shoulder, girl on the shoulder, whatever it is. They swap roles. Somebody gets to go home. Somebody starts the mission, somebody does the middle, somebody might finish it at the end. Economics, the logistics costs are down, the unit economics are far better, and there is an awful lot of opportunity there. Plus, we're in the business, we still operate, let's say somewhere north of 25 and south of 30% of our business is still done in piloted helicopters and aircraft, because we still pursue business where drones will eventually take over, but today they can't for whatever reason. So we'll do those with piloted helicopters and airplanes. So by having a remote operations center that we can move all of the operational control, mission planning, crew scheduling, flight watch, and regulatory compliance activities into one operations center, exactly the way airlines and commercial aviation companies run now, you're in a situation that you truly become a next generation aviation company, and you're able to operate equipment on a global scale in a very efficient way. And that's where the lights went on. And then so I'm looking at it and going, we've released this information publicly, so I'll speak to some of it. When we look at what we did last year, what we expect to do this year, because Volatus, we've been improving our bottom line every year. Our target this year was to be EBITDA neutral to slightly positive, and a good, healthy EBITDA going forward, striving towards cash flow positive. And we've demonstrated it quarter after quarter as we've continued to both grow our revenues, grow our gross margin, and optimize our SG&A expenses. But with Drone Delivery Canada, that actually helps us accelerate that. So we're looking at a combined company next year that conservatively, in my opinion, right? This is based on our pipeline, what we can see, and all of those usual forward-looking disclaimers. The truth of the matter is, we've released a target of 70 million Canadian in revenues next year with a $10 million positive EBITDA. And you know what? It's because the technology enables us to be more competitive, improve our gross margins, and provide services that otherwise we can't, to do things like support the right whale surveillance activities off the east coast of the United States right now, and on, other things like that. And then when we looked at putting them together, one of the, at the time, subsequent benefits that we identified was the fact that Volatus is a very, I'll say, illiquid stock to date. We trade very lightly, which is one of the reasons that we sometimes seem to be a little bit stuck in the mud. And it's because we can make a big announcement and nobody really sees it, because the people that see it are people that already own a bunch. And when the stock price goes down, they just keep adding more, right? They buy. So not a lot of activity. Drone Delivery Canada has more than 140,000 shareholders. So, and what I learned in getting to know some of those, because since the announcement, had a whole bunch of them reached out directly to us to learn about our company, say, who are our new partners? But these people are just, diehard fans of the technology, the brand, and the future of where drones are going, drones being the future of aviation. And so they reach out to us and they get really interested in this partnership. And that was reflected in what happened with the stock price. Because under a circumstance like the way that this transaction works is, for every one share of Volatus, as Volatus gets arranged into Drone Delivery Canada, there'll be 1.785 times the Drone Delivery Canada shares for every one share of Volatus. And what that does is it results in a merger of equals. So both shareholder groups will emerge with about 224 million shares each, so 50% of the company. And that's how it works out. So what you would normally expect with that type of a ratio is, when you make an announcement, you'd expect a little bit of selling pressure on one side, a little bit of buying pressure on the other side, to basically close the gap for the transaction. That's not what you saw. You actually saw both stocks went up. One went up more than the other because of the exchange ratio, but people are loyal to this company. So what you have is people hanging on to their stock in the company that they love, and buying some stock in our company to almost, in effect, average themselves down and improve their position in the merged company. It's been very interesting to watch. That's Glen's perspective on what's going on. But both companies experienced a bump, and the social media traffic has been positive. It's been as I think what happened is a lot of people got it. They saw these two companies and went, "Hey, great technology," and then you've got this sales and marketing muscle that's out there promoting real opportunities. And honestly, Tim, we're jointly doing things together now. We did a press release earlier this week about a project where we were working with a Mitsubishi company called Anymile on starting to develop commercial solutions for delivering parts and oil samples back and forth to oil platforms. And of course, oil and gas is one of our biggest sectors. We're a big pipeline surveillance company. So that's working with existing customers to expand what we're doing for them. And all of a sudden, there's Drone Delivery Canada. Guess what? They have the technical ecosystem to tie right into this with the drone that'll do the job, the remote operations center that'll monitor the job. And so we actually tied the two together in a press release with the three of us doing this exercise, Mitsubishi, Volatus, and Drone Delivery Canada providing the technology. And again, the markets reacted very favorably. People see the connection. And it was so, I'll tell you, for a guy like me, so validating to see that, when you go out there, you never know how the markets will react to certain things, but they saw it the same way I saw it, as an exciting opportunity for the future. And it's really been exciting to see that.
What is what's the ticker symbol? Are they on the OTC?
They are. So in both companies, Volatus is on both exchanges. So on the venture exchange, we're VOL and they are FLT. So flight for them, VOL for Volatus on the venture. In the US, Volatus is VLTTF on OTC, and they are Takeoff, TAKOF, which I just absolutely love. And for the record, when the companies come together, Volatus is being arranged into Drone Delivery Canada. The new company will emerge Volatus Aerospace. But the ticker symbols for Volatus Aerospace will actually be FLT and TAKOF, so flight and takeoff. They're very, very well known. And Drone Delivery Canada's brand is going to be preserved because there's a lot of brand equity, specifically in the cargo space. It's very well known. And middle mile cargo delivery will eventually be one of the biggest sectors of our industry. They were just well ahead of their time.
I am taking a look at their chart right now. I think it's really important to highlight the fact that the small cap, micro cap space has been getting crushed for, I think we're going on 37 months. And it has nothing to do with what the companies are doing. It's the actual entire microcap space, right?
Yep.
So, a lot of companies that are down 70, 90%. And I think the pendulum has swung way, way, way to one side. And it can't stay that way. It won't stay that way. It will swing back. And when it swings back, the companies that have managed to weather a pandemic and supply chain issues of historic nature and an interest rate hike cycle historic in nature, I think, and not just survived, but in your case, thriving, right? I mean, this is a big deal right here.
Yeah, it was for us. What made it really big, and it's right place, right time, good luck, whatever you think it is. But at the end of the day, finding a company, because the most important thing to me has always been how will this transaction benefit the company? Because you know what, it's wonderful to get a bump in your stock price, but if you don't have a healthy company, it's not sustainable. And realistically, we're driving to try and build a sustainable company that's making a difference in the markets that we're serving and the lives of the people that we serve. And realistically, that's the first priority. But then the next thing is you got a whole bunch of people investing in your company they're my partners. Like our shareholders, I'm a big shareholder. They are my partners. They're not faceless individuals. They're entrusting me with the use of their capital. But the challenge is if you can't get enough eyes on the stock, then they're not getting rewarded for their investment in a company, no matter how well the company performs. So for us, finding a solution like this that's going to help us accelerate our business plan, because believe it or not, the remote operations center, we were a month away from launching our own remote operations center to support some of the products that we developed and the roadmap that we have for operating the larger drones. This moved us a year and a half ahead, because even if I build one, I don't have 7,000 flights worth of experience to demonstrate that we are highly competent. And that's exactly what you have with Drone Delivery Canada. They're a highly competent group of professionals and engineers that have developed some great technology. The reason that they've struggled is because they picked an individual market sector and they became very focused on technology, where Volatus has largely been technology agnostic. The combination of the two companies is going to be something a little bit more, you're going to take the best from both, right? We will continue to now be a technology-enabled commercial company. We will continue to maintain the technologies and invest in technology where it makes sense, but still maintaining a large element of being technology agnostic. So if we have the need to operate, let's say, a drone that has capabilities different than the drones that we already have, and that technology is out there, then that's the technology we acquire, and our engineering group will integrate that technology into our ecosystem, which allows us to commercialize, solve customer problems, and commercialize the solution much more quickly. So I believe that this is going to drive good, healthy revenue growth and improve our margins, because the logistics costs of doing this work goes way down. The drones are more expensive when you start being able to fly something for 12 or 15 hours. You're now talking drones that are priced similar to a helicopter. But the difference is the operating economics are also very different, and the scale of the contracts that they're actually supporting are dramatically different. And so this was it was that perfect find where the two coming together, it's 1 + 1 = 4. But the second part of that is, now I'm in a situation where, without having to spend ridiculous amounts of money to attract a lot of eyes to our stock, we already will have a lot of eyes on our stock. All I have to do is be effective at communicating and make sure people can see what we're doing, which I think Danielle Gagne, our head of communications, has been doing a good job of that for a long time. We've been quiet for the last 4 months because we've been in the middle of doing what we just announced. But at the end of the day, we believe now people are going to see it. And the market will react however the market reacts. If they're not happy with me, we'll get a slap. And if they are happy with what the team is doing, then presumably, they'll reward us accordingly. But at the end of the day, it still comes back to running a viable business first and foremost. And this technology helps us. And the 145,000 people that will be joining forces monitoring what it is that we're doing, they're already there. They're already watching this stock, right? So now when they start seeing us perform, hopefully all of them will be rewarded accordingly, and not with bumps and roller coaster rides, but with some healthy, sustainable growth driven by the creation of real value, real sustainable value with a viable company.
All right, Glenn. So let's go over some of the numbers. Do they have any debt? I mean, are they coming to the table with any kind of cash? How is the company being?
Yeah, no, they're coming to the table with cash. So both of these companies, just to give you a little background on the process, to do a deal like this, both companies had to get independent fairness opinions, backed by large credible organizations. And when they do that, they actually have to they study the model in great detail. And the model has to be self-sustaining. It can't be dependent on external financing to do it. So DDC does bring cash to the table. They're a debt-free company. Volatus carries a fair amount of debt because we've avoided having big dilutive events. It's become more and more difficult because debt's becoming very expensive, and equity was equally abusively costly if it was available at all. So the combination of the two companies actually looks stronger there as well. So our balance sheet will be quite healthy. I will direct anybody that's interested, if they go to either the investor section of Drone Delivery Canada's website or Volatus's website, they can download both the press release and also the deck that talks about the combined transaction. And each of the websites are worth looking at because they talk about the benefits, the business benefits of the merged companies from the perspective of their own shareholder group. And it's funny, because when you read them, They're the same benefits. It's just looking at the subject through a different lens on either side, and both of them are positive, which is exactly what we've seen.
That's excellent, Ryan. I'm super happy for you, man, because you've been a straight shooter since the first meeting you and I had. And I mean, I thought then that this was an industry that was very fragmented, that was very early stage. I mean, I still don't think we know all of the things that are going to wind up being used or how that's going to be used. I think that will continue to evolve for a long, long time to come. The last time we met, you had just gotten line of sight. You had just gotten approval, right, for being, I think, one of the only ones that had that, because of the fact that you are an actual aviation company, right? That you have a license to fly a plane, right?
Yep, commercially. That's right.
Yeah,
We're a commercial air carrier. We actually have two of our subsidiary companies are licensed commercial aircraft operators. But I want to tell you, a lot of the approvals to fly beyond visual line of sight, the regulators are evolving, right? So there's more and more companies that are able to get some limited authorities to do things. But in this case, both Volatus and Drone Delivery Canada have been successful at really pushing the boundaries by developing their safety cases. And together, we believe that's even going to be stronger. There was one other thing I wanted to tell you, Tim, that's really important. The
okay.
way these teams have come together, Volatus's strength has been commercial. And in fact, the leadership team of Volatus is staying in place with one small change internally, which was actually a desired change by probably one of our key executives and one of the founding guys with Volatus, Rob Walker. So Rob's been our chief operating officer, but that poor lad's been spread so thin because of our growth, because he also oversees our sales team. He's a guy with a commercial background, educated, award-winning international marketing and sales professional, been in aerospace for 4 decades, but he's been spread really thin, overseeing the operations and the commercial activities. With this transaction, it allows him to become our chief commercial officer and really put even more emphasis on the commercial development. As you know, that's the engine that drives the whole train. And then the CEO of Drone Delivery Canada is a guy that, to be blunt, if he wasn't with Drone Delivery Canada and I was looking for somebody to fill a chief operating officer role, he's the guy. Highly disciplined. We spent the time to have each one of the management team actually go one-on-one. They had dinners together. They got to know each other, because you never want to break the model. We've got something that's working. Well, you know what? He brings a dimension to the company that generates real value in our leadership team. So we've got that. The board of directors is a 2 directors Volatus, 2 directors from Drone Delivery Canada, and then Volatus's chairman is taking over. So kind of a 3-2 there, with 2 independent director slots that we'll fill. We're not in a big rush to do that at the moment because we've got the governance that we need to get started. So we've got all of the things that made Volatus successful are still there. But remember, Drone Delivery Canada's got a very disciplined engineering lab, a very disciplined remote operations capability, and so on. And we have all of those assets there. So bringing them all together, that's
at Drone Delivery. How many employees are you going to be acquiring there?
So I'm pulling this. Let's call this an order of magnitude, right? Volatus is somewhere around, I think, 130-ish full-time employees, give or take a bunch. Drone Delivery Canada, they're sitting right now. I know they're probably somewhere between 25 and 30 employees there at the moment. Predominantly engineering staff, drone technicians, and pilots. Operating pilots, plus the usual management staff. Volatus, people had seen recently that the Drone Delivery Canada CFO had resigned. Obviously, you have 2 companies come together. There's only one CFO spot. Abby has been with me. He's my guy, right?
I know. We don't even.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, the guy that was the Drone Delivery Canada guy, if I was to pick another guy, he would have been that guy too. So, but his desire was to run a public company as a CFO, young, really sharp guy. And so it worked out that he had an opportunity. So he left DDC brought in an interim CFO to bridge the gap here, but everything has come together quite nicely. So there is synergies on both sides because each company brings its own strength and there is some duplication. But the result is an entire organization that's substantially stronger because they come to the table with complementary skills and capabilities. It's really exciting. I got to be honest with you. You know, I've been doing M&As for most of my adult life,
Yeah.
always in aerospace. This is perhaps one of the most exciting transactions that I've done because it just addressed so many things at the same time, and we're super pumped. And we're actually starting to do things together now because the opportunities are here now. We put in little commercial agreements that allow us to get started even before we've come together formally.
No, that's fair. It's fantastic. I can feel your excitement. I mean, I can see where I can see this is gonna be a big lift for you guys.
Yeah, I think, well, the markets have responded really positively, and I'm starting to understand why the more I talk to the shareholders. Because funny enough, while they're a very active group, they see it, right? The drone industry, because we think about it like drones, it's still a highly fragmented, nascent industry globally, and it's accelerating like crazy. So it's ripe for opportunities, and we're just kind of in the right spot at the right size at the right time. And pulling these two companies together allows us to really seize that, opportunity to be that next generation aviation company, because we do operate piloted airplanes and helicopters as well as drones. Drones are definitely the future, right? But we've got to get there. And in the meantime, when we've got customer needs, sometimes they get filled with piloted aircraft in the interim. So I think it's, the only thing I can say is the guy on the inside, there's only so much I can say. And when I tell you what I think the stock market could do, because I have all kinds of people saying, Glenn, what should I expect to see happen here? Well, the only way I can answer that is to turn around and say, my job is to run the company, and I'm not qualified to give you stock market advice. So I send them articles that have been written out there about, by credible people talking about what normally happens in scenarios like ours. But I'm not sure there's a lot of scenarios like ours because the excitement around the deal, even the number of investors, when you see what they're doing, people just see it. And it's really empowering. And the amount of social media traffic we've got, it's been positive. You usually expect a little from both sides. This one is almost all positive.
Come on. Don't be telling me that now. Really?
Yeah.
All right. Give them time. The guys that want to tear things down, the guys that like to just, see the negative side of everything, they'll come out.
You know what I'm going to tell you? So sooner or later, the serious investors are people that are either guys like you or guys that appreciate people like you that, you dig into this company. You've been following us since the beginning. You ask tough questions, and anytime something happens, I can expect a text message saying, hey, what's up? Let's talk, right? You're interested. And I found that there's a lot of even retail investors out there. Some of them are kind of gamblers in the casino, but a lot of the investors that find a sector that they're interested in, they get it. And there's a lot in Drone Delivery Canada, there's a lot of young investors. And those are people that are looking at the technology, and they get it even more than I did. I mean, think about it. It took me a couple of years here to figure out, hey, this kind of a transaction with a company like this is super exciting. Maybe it's the right time as opposed to not seeing it, but there are a lot of investors that are seeing it.
You and I talked real quickly before we hopped on here, and I've been investing for a long time, and I told you initially it was all about me. That's all I gave a shit about, was I just wanted to make money, and then I wanted to help retail investors become smarter investors because they've been the butt of Wall Street jokes for as long as I can remember. That was a pretty challenging thing because a lot of retail investors, unfortunately, they're either not astute or they don't want to learn, and that's a challenging thing to overcome. Investing is a patience game. There are a lot of cycles within markets, within sectors. there are a lot of things that you have to battle. It's not just the company and its performance. There are outside factors that will impact the stock. I think there are a bunch of companies out there right now that have, because they are small cap stocks or micro caps, have gotten just pummeled with micro caps. That's just how it is. No matter what they've done, whether they've grown their businesses, whether they've strengthened their balance sheet, it doesn't matter. Not now. At some point, it will. It will matter in a big, big way. When
Yeah.
when the pendulum swings, those things are gonna move. They're gonna move in a in a big way. I've been through enough cycles to know when things turn, boy, is it fun. I mean, you can have an account that is blood red, and that account can go from being blood red to green in a very short period of time when the pendulum swings, right?
Well, you've done a very good job of identifying some of those, because I mean, I think of the one company that I absolutely love outside of my own, because my job is to focus on this one, but I watch what's going on in ProStar and what those guys are doing and the exciting opportunities that, with the technological developments and companies like that. I mean, they're
It's so funny
jewels.
you say that because I just right before I hopped on with you, sent out a little note to LinkedIn because what I'm noticing with ProStar is the logos, the amount of companies that are adopting their software. You're starting to see almost weekly now, where it used to be it'd take a month to see somebody sign up. And as the insurers and municipalities and utility owners and anybody that's got underground assets start to discover that and see that their competitors or their associates and colleagues at different organizations are adopting this, it should snowball. I mean, it should start to accelerate because when people understand what it is and how important it is, it's a safety. It saves lives. It can cut. I don't know. I think we spend somewhere between 30 and 60 billion annually, and just in the United States, on accidental utility strikes because we don't know where anything is.
Actually, it's interesting you say that. The kind of stuff we're doing right now that's interesting. It's even very, it's not the same, but it's kind of addressing the same problems that ProStar is addressing. We have contracts now in oil and gas. We have two that I'll speak of. One of them, we have a technology partner that has like a magnetometer type sensor, and it's meant for identifying specifically the exact locations of pipelines that are going underwater along rivers and so on, because you'd be surprised, right? Some of these pipelines are much older than people realize, and the technology of where they were put in and how they were routed was a little bit less precise back then. But the big one in the United States and Canada is all these orphan wells that have they're leaking. Some of them still have product in there that just through inefficiency that hasn't been drained out. Some of them they have environmental concerns, and now there's a big effort to identify them. We're flying drones over them to do methane visualization, optical gas imaging, and those same people, when you've got oil and gas companies with wells, they're getting ahead of it. They're out there. They want to see it. They want to address it way before it becomes a regulatory issue. They're just managing their assets and doing what they should be doing. And at the same time, they've got their own power line infrastructure. So we're ending up flying, looking at right-of-ways for vegetation, looking for, with corona sensors for leakage and other problems in the lines. And all of these things are coming together. And I think partially because they have to. You look at the wildfire scenario worldwide, Canada last year, the whole country was on fire.
But there is no question that these are needs. These aren't wants. In my view, I mean, to think that we have 35 million miles of underground utilities in the United States, and we don't know where they are.
Yeah.
35 million miles. We have 2.6 million miles of paved road. We got 35 million miles of underground utilities. That is some of the stuff's been there for 60 to 100 years.
Yep.
We don't know where they are. We don't even know what the pipes are probably made out of. I mean, this is a big deal. And to think that in today's day and age, we don't have a digital map of our assets underground is a very scary thing, right? And and every day we're putting in more and more stuff, fiber. I mean, we just keep layering more stuff over the stuff that's already there. And we can't continue to do that. We have to identify where these things are. We got to know where the water valves are, where the shutoffs are. I mean,
and we have the technology to do it now, right? Like,
yes, and that is why I say, this is why you also are the same way. Yes, there are problems in the world, and there have always been problems in the world. There will always be problems in the world to worry about. But I'll tell you what, we make mistakes, but we do a lot of good things too. We didn't get where we are today with all this technology and all of these innovations because we just are bacteria and parasites, and we do good things. Yep. We make mistakes. Hopefully we learn from those mistakes and we continue to try and better humanity, right? That's really what it's about. And this is a company that is doing things to make people safer, right? To who knows where this is all going to go? Situational awareness. There's just so many things that we have the capabilities to do, and those capabilities will continue to grow because we will continue to innovate. And as long as we continue to innovate, I think we're going to be just fine. I mean, yes,
I think well, drones, for example, drones start replacing human beings where jobs are dull, dirty, or dangerous, right? But they're also clean technology by nature, even if they're fossil fuel burning technologies. And, the vast majority of our technologies are actually electric. Hydrogen is coming along, which is clean. At least the operation of the hydrogen is clean. But even if there's a gas engine, so anything that you've got that's flying more than 4 or 5 hours is either got a gas generator or probably being powered by gas, or it could be some other alternate fuel source. But that's the nature of the beast. But they're small, so they're burning a fraction of what the other aircraft were. The other thing that I think is really key, and Bill Gates, I always admire even what he does today. He wrote a book called Avoiding Climate Disaster. I'm pretty sure I got that title right. And our director of communications, our head of Marcom for the company, Danielle Gagne, she said, you got to read that book because I need to be better educated on ESG. Oh my God. He said it brilliantly. He said, with all the problems that are going on in the world, and we're seeing it, doesn't matter. You can't deny we're facing climate change, right? But people aren't going to change the way they do, the way they live. They're still going to travel. They're going to do all those sorts of things. So the future economically begins to the people that can innovate the solutions that allow us to do both things at the same time, continue to live our lives, but live in, first of all, harmony, stop doing damage to our planet, and eventually get to the point that you're solving problems for the planet. We're actually reversing the damage. Do you know that they can actually, with carbon, something I learned, a lot of the carbon that goes into the environment, one of the biggest offenders for that is actually concrete. And it has to do with how they produce it. But did you know that they actually have the ability to recapture those carbon molecules and inject them back in? The reason that we don't a lot is because you got a green premium there, right? But as we become more and more conscious, I think he said it brilliantly. There is literally, limitless profits available to the people that get in here and innovate and solve the problems. And I think, companies like ProStar, who I happen to be a fan of, and companies like ours, which I'm leaning on ProStar at the moment because I'm not talking about myself quite as much. But the truth of the matter, even ours, right? We're taking fossil fuel burning aircraft, replacing them instead of a 3,000-pound asset flying with a young pilot at a low altitude with their head stuck out the window looking at stuff. Now we're replacing that with 200-pound assets flying around that are either, totally green or certainly big improvements in terms of environmental impact. They don't have people on board. So God forbid there is a problem, you're losing a small asset. They're small, so the risk to property on the ground is there, and they're digital, which means the information that they're producing is better quality, repetitive information. And you know what's happening? We're building a business doing just that, solving problems, doing it in a way that's economically better for our clients, environmentally big scores for our clients.
What I love about you, when I learned that, by the way, I think the conference that I went to with you was coming back into town in September or something.
It is. Yeah.
So what I learned when I went to that conference and I talked to your people, not just you, customer service, I could say for a lot of industries nowadays, isn't all that. In a lot of places, right? A lot of retail operations, I think customer service is somewhat lackluster. But one thing that stood out to me clear as day is solving the customer problem is your number one priority.
100%. Sorry about that. I thought I turned that off. One of the problems with the digital age, right, is if you don't turn something off, they try to ring in. Forgive me.
No problem. So, I mean, the whole team is committed to, customer is everything. And I love that kind of, because it is everything. I mean,
Yep.
what's interesting is actually it could be more than that. By being a shareholder or consumer of a company, if you like the company and you have the opportunity to become part owner of the company, I mean, then you become an advocate for the company and you can have an impact. I mean, I think one of the things that Reddit proved with GameStop and AMC is that there is strength in numbers. If you have 85 million people that want to buy $10 or 10 shares in a company, that's a lot of shares. Okay,
Yeah.
85 million people buy 10 shares of a company stock. That's a lot of shares.
That's a lot of activity.
That's a lot of activity, and it doesn't have to be a lot of money, and it could turn into a good chunk of money for the people that bought 10 shares. I guess the way I kind of look at it is you can go out and you can do protests and pickets and loot and trash cities and do all kinds of stupid shit. Or you could find companies that are doing good things. You can either be somebody that tears things down, or you can be somebody that helps build things up. And by being an investor, and I don't care how small it is, it can have an impact. And people need to have or recognize that that's what the public markets are for, is to find companies that are doing things that you believe in, that you think will have an impact on humanity in a positive way, right? And be part of it. I mean, that's something to feel good about, right?
100%. Yeah.
And if people, the poor don't have to be poor. It doesn't take a lot of money if you're buying stocks that are. Wall Street will tell you that penny stocks are penny stocks because they're not good companies. That's a bunch of bullshit. Every Apple at one time was, I think, under $1. Okay. A lot of companies that are mammoth companies today were at one point either penny stocks or low dollar stocks. And they have become these huge corporations. So if you can find those companies, and they do exist, this is a company here that is not existing just to print shares. This is a company that's trying to build a business that's going to be around for a long, long time and is going to make a difference in the world. And that's something you can be proud of being part of, right?
I'll tell you, I'm fortunate. We've got an extraordinary team, And, I look at our leadership. The reason that we do so well is because any one of the guys that are guys and girls, I shouldn't say that. We've got a diverse leadership group, but they can do my job. Arguably, some of them probably better than I do. And I'm just privileged to be around them. And, I mentioned that book, that Bill Gates book. Well, that's our head of communications saying to me, Glenn, you need to be better educated on this because we're really making a difference there and it matters to people. And you said something before we started today where you said, by helping educate people, educate investors on companies, you're not just educating them on Volatus, you're educating them on how to look at the stock market and how to look at companies and what they should be digging into. And if a company's not willing to communicate with its shareholders, you probably want to think about why not. There are people in capital markets. I've witnessed them. I've learned a lot by studying the companies and found, there's people that do very well by starting up public companies and they start up one and they move to another one and so on and so on. But there's a whole bunch of people like the team that I work with where you get involved in, your objective. Everybody hopes one day you do well for your grandchildren, right? But at the end of the day, the first reason a company like us goes public is because if we get that shareholder support, if we get enough eyes on our stock that people appreciate it, the stock becomes currency that allows us to continue to grow. And you imagine right now, Delta Airlines, a massive airline, Air Canada, same thing. Well, they were a whole bunch of small things once upon a time. It was a fragmented industry. And we're in the drone industry right now, which is very fragmented. Massive opportunities. Now is the time. So part of the reason, that we're doing this is huge opportunity, right time. And, something that you and I brushed over quickly before, drones are the future. Whether we're talking about, aerial drones or when I take a train at the airport, you go through Atlanta right now, you jump on the underground tube, there's nobody in the front or back end of that. It just keeps going back and forth and there's someone watching it, but there's so much autonomy happening. It allows human beings to have better quality jobs, and the digital transportation is, it adds to the S part of ESG as well, not just the environment, taking jobs away that are dull, dirty, or dangerous so that people can do jobs that aren't dull, aren't dirty, and aren't dangerous, right? And it's there's so much, and we're seeing it all over the place. It's like a new revolution. But again, Tim, I got to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to tell our story and the ongoing interest that you show. I hope that people will take a good look at the stock, both stocks. Look at both companies because I'm quite proud of our soon-to-be Symbiont partners here, Drone Delivery Canada. Their technology is extraordinary, and they're an organization full of extraordinary human beings.
Brandon, let me ask you a question because you're both OTC stocks, right?
Yep.
So let me ask you a question. After this combination, how many shares approximately, do you know how many shares will be outstanding fully diluted?
Yeah, so it starts coming pretty close to about 450 million.
That to me is concerning a little bit.
Big
right?
cap table. Yep.
That's a big cap table. Then it starts to you start getting up to a billion shares. I get nervous, right? Because that's a lot of revenue you're going to need to bring in to get to cash flow positive and profitability, right? Is there any consideration I mean, you're going to do the merger. That's where you're going to be. I guess in my head, if things really start to kick in and revenues start to increase and you've got a clear vision of acceleration that doesn't seem like it's going to slow down anytime soon, at some point you look to uplist to a senior exchange, right?
Correct. Yep. So I would say a couple of things that I see there. I think this is the world according to Glenn, right? So, listen at your own risk kind of thing. But for me, I think a lot of people, because they're really trying to, it becomes a stock market issue, not a company issue, they go too fast. So there's no question that, this is a big cap table and it's almost ripe for consolidation. The problem that happens is if you do it at the wrong time, it's like a company that's trading on a major exchange in the US like NASDAQ. that ends up hovering below a dollar for too long, one of the ways they can get back on side with the exchange is they consolidate their shares. Well, consolidating the shares to clean up the cap table is a good thing when the company's pointed in the right direction and it's got positive momentum. And it's the same as going to the US, going to a big market, a big board, even Canada, going to, the TSX versus the venture exchange, or going to NASDAQ or New York, obviously prestigious and so on and so on. But when you're a small company, you want to go there for the right reasons at the right time. And me, I've always said we got to be over 100 million in revenues. We have to have a strong balance sheet. We have to have recognition in the market. We've got to have an investor group that really sees us. And you don't want to be consolidating your stock just to climb a little higher and climb a little higher to fall a little further, right? The idea being is making sure that you do the right thing at the right time. And I'll tell you, what is the right thing at the right time? Fortunately, I'm surrounded by brilliant people that are continuously educating me, and we are looking at that all the time. But it is a matter of, timing, and you got to make sure that you're not doing it driven by ego or some short-term opportunity. It's got to make sense. And there are people out there that can make sense of these complex scenarios. And I'm somebody that'll suck that up like a sponge.
So happy to look, you and I have had a lot of conversations. I mean, I know you're not going to make a stupid move. I mean, that's it's not a panacea. Uplisting to a senior exchange is not going to fix all your problems. As a matter of fact, it's probably going to intensify the fact that you're going to need to execute extremely well. Because if you miss a quarter or two, the last thing you want to do is spend your time trying to figure out how you're going to stay listed on the NASDAQ, right? Because you fell below price minimum, whatever. You want to do it when all cylinders are firing, the wind is at your back. You do the consolidation, but it is and this is what retail investors really need to understand, because I get blasted on this all the time, anytime I bring it up for any company. When you do it from a position of strength, it's a good thing. I can't emphasize that enough. When you do it from a position of strength, the problem is most retail investors are involved in companies that have to do a reverse to stay alive. That is significantly different from doing a reverse to uplist to a senior exchange. That's the two can't even be compared. So, Glenn, I know you're going to do the right things. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the company. I can't wait to meet the CEO of the drone
delivery. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? He's the fellow that's an example of somebody that just keeps forging forward, looking forward, no matter where the markets are. Because I got to tell you, I'm quite grateful to him for having the vision and the foresight to drive this deal forward. So, Tim, really appreciate you giving me this opportunity, and encourage anybody that's listening just to, do their homework, have a look at the companies, because we got a lot of stuff going on and it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. All right, Glenn, thank you so much maybe after it's all said and done. When is this supposed to close?
Probably around about the end of July, or maybe the first week of August is when it'll be done.
Okay, so after we close, maybe we can get you and the CEO of Drone Delivery and have a little powwow.
I think that'd be fabulous. Look forward to it.
All right, man. Thanks, man.
Right,
thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Today at Volatus Aerospace, Glen Lynch with ticker symbol VLTTF. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Trading. We appreciate you taking the time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.